Hi, this is PD at BurgZerg Arcade at BurgZergArcade.com, and this is tutorial 129, I believe. In our last video, we went ahead and fixed up our little the weapon bug for equipping and unequipping items, and we also went over how we were going to change the array for items so that it's a little bit easier to add and remove items from the list. Today I actually want to start going in and figure out how I'm going to start adding armor to my list. Now if we go ahead and take a look at the actual script that creates the items, I'll go ahead and open that up. Right here, our item generator script. Let's just go through it. The first line of code, this is the method that we're going to be calling right here for it. Our first line of code decides whether, what type of item we're going to make. Up until now we've only been making one type of item, and that was a weapon. So we are probably going to have to start dealing with this. And we're going to want to be able to create a piece of armor now besides just armor or weapons. And for the name here, this was something that I'll probably implement a little bit later on. I won't get as in-depth in the tutorials as I have actually already written out in my documentation. But basically the way it works is that you have your name of your item, which is derived from, well, this here. And I believe we're actually doing this now. Yes, we are. We're deriving the name of our item from here. And I want to be able to prefix and give a suffix to all of my items as well. So for the instance, let's say we make a sword. So it comes down here, it makes it sword. It assigns its random values to it, and it spits it out back up here. And then we come in and we add a few more random values to it, then we eventually just return it. Right here, I actually wanted to add a prefix to the item. Basically for the material that it's made of. So if it was made of iron, for instance, instead of it coming back just saying, sword, it would be an iron sword. And then of course later on, for when we start adding buffs to our weapon, any sort of dominant buff that's on the weapon can also be added as a suffix. So for instance, if it was an elemental sword, say fire, it could be like the iron long sword of flame or something like that. That's why that's there. And again, if I do get into it, it won't be till much later when I get into materials and stuff like that for items. But anyway, that's why the line is there. So I just want to keep coming down. Here are common properties for all of our items. That's why they're kind of under here. And then we just simply return the item. Everything there seems pretty straightforward. So what we're really going to want to do is just create another method that actually starts creating armor. But before we do that, one other thing we really should look at is the way we're actually equipping these items to our character. And right now, if we actually just go into game and we take a look here, we'll just start it up. And if we open up the character panel and our inventory panel, let's just quickly grab an item here. I'll just grab them all. And let's go ahead and equip the sword. We had one spot just for our weapon. Now we're going to want more spots for multiple weapons, and I already know a lot of this GUI is going to be changed. So I'm not even going to bother playing with it, even adjusting it just to the proper sizes, simply because I know we're going to be switching over to UI Toolkit eventually, and pretty much anything we do size-wise, well, I guess it won't be totally lost because we'll be able to use those dimensions when we're creating our new GUI with UI Toolkit. But I'm just going to save everything for that. But anyway, I'm going to have a list of all these different items here that we have currently equipped. Let's go ahead and take a look at how we're storing these spots in our script. So let's go ahead, we'll head over to the PC class, and if we look here, we just have a private item, which was just holding a reference to the item that we're having equipped, or at least our weapon. We're going to want to make an array here of all the different spots that we can possibly store them in. It doesn't necessarily have to be an array, we can just have a list of different items that we're equipping, but I think an array would probably be the best. It'd be kind of nice to enumerate this array with the actual spots that our equipment is taking. So for instance, if we go ahead and open up our armor script, we might have one there. Here we go. We'll just open that up, and we should be looking at this anyway. Right now we'll notice that it's deriving from the clothing class. And there's not much here. All we're doing is assigning an armor level, and that looks like that's all there is here. So we have some constructors for it, and then we just have a basic getter and setter for it. We haven't done anything fancy with it yet. Let's take a look at the clothing class. And when we get in here, we have the armor slot right there. So this tells us where we can put it. And again, just basic constructors and basic setter and getter for it. And it comes from buff items. So I'm going to want to open that up as well. And I assume weapons is from here as well. Let me just check weapon out to make sure it is from buff item. It is. So one more for buff item. And buff item holds a hash table of all the buffs that we can possibly have. I'm not really sure why I made it a hash table. Probably because we hadn't covered hash tables yet. So we'll go in, we just set up the hash table. We can add buffs, we can remove buffs, and we can get the buff count. And of course we can actually get the buffs in the hash table. Okay, so the important part that I'm going to want to look at is, we don't need this, will probably be the armor slots. Because I'm going to want to know exactly where this armor fits. And since right now I'm going to be working on a shield, if we look at the spots that I have currently set up, I don't even have one for shield. Unless you really want to wear your shield on your head. For now, I'm just going to make, well, let's just quickly go over these. You know, your helmet goes on your head. Your pauldrons or whatever you're wearing on your shoulder pads go on your shoulder. Torso is basically the rest of the upper body besides your shoulders. Legs are, well, your lower part of the body. Then you have your hands for gloves, feet for boots. And I have a few items that can go on your back. I haven't really added a whole lot of them yet. There's a few that come with the programs pack, but I might add more later on. That's why that's there. But I definitely want one for your shield. And for now, I'm just going to put that in my offhand weapon slot, or just offhand slot. That's what I'm going to call it. So offhand. And don't forget the comma. And of course, you could put it anywhere in the array. It's just, that's where I put it. And to be honest, I'm actually just going to add it to the end. And make sure you have a comma on all of them but the end. So I have my slot for my shield. And while I'm here, there's one thing I wanted to point out. I get a lot of email from people about a lot of my getters and setters. Basically, you know, we have this variable up here. And a lot of people are like, well, why do you make a private variable up here and all you do is set up your basic setters and getters? And there's a lot of other ways we can get around, you know, typing so many lines of code. So for instance, you could have just made it public, or you could, you know, do a private, let me see, this is armor slot. I'm just going to make an int for demonstrations. And I'm just going to call it, you know, some int. And I like to put an underscore before all my private stuff. And then there's other ways you can do it where you can just set like a get set. And that's fine. The reason why I type the whole thing out is probably because I come more from a background of using C++. And also because I want to leave myself as much room as possible to come back and easily expand all this. Later on I can come back and, you know, condense all of this stuff if I really want. But since I'm doing most of it off the top of my head, I really want to give myself as much flexibility as possible. So later on, if I want to come down and, you know, for some reason I have to make some changes here, you know, I just simply hit enter a couple times and make all my changes and everything's fine. But anyway, I just wanted to point that out. So let's save that off. And it looks like we're coming up in 9 minutes in this video and we actually haven't really done any coding yet. So the thing I wanted to do in this video was actually switch this over to an array and then just access the proper array down here for the item that we're currently trying to equip and unequip. So let's just start off up here. I'm just going to put it right above it. And it's going to be private and item, but an array. And I'm just going to call it equipment. And this will be equal to new item. And we're going to have to put some length in here. And the length is going to be the number of equipment spots that you actually have. And, well, let's go back into clothing. Here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then I'm going to have my main hand weapon. So I'm already up to 9. So let's start compiling a list. And I'm just going to come down to the bottom, make sure you're outside of the class. I'm just going to start compiling a list here for equipment slots. So public enum, and I'm just going to call it equipment slots. Or slot, not plural. And I'll just start off, well, we can copy all these into it, because we know these are equipment slots. Maybe. There we go. And besides offhand, we'll also have main hand. So I'm just going to put a comma there and just say main hand. And we're also going to have jewelry spots, but I haven't got into jewelry yet, so I'm going to leave those off the list. So already we have, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 spots. I'm going to, at the very end, put one in that just says count. And I'm going to make sure this is always at the end. And the reason why is because now we can come up here and just say equipment. Let me just take a look here. Called it equipment slots. So equipment slots down dot count. And we don't actually have to go through and count them all now. We can just, whatever this is assigned to. And of course, you'll want to make sure that you start off at 0 and keep going up. But anyway, so we now have our array for that, and we'll want to make sure that the weapon that we're currently equipping down here goes into the proper slot. So right now, that's the main hand. Actually, one thing that I forgot to do is we have to make sure we convert this to an int. And it looks like I spelled it wrong. We'll come back down to the bottom. Yep, spelled it wrong down here too. All right, so I'm just going to save that off. I accidentally increased the font, so we'll just save that off. And we'll just come back into Unity, let it compile, and we have no errors, just the one warning about the variable we've set up that we are not using. And actually, let's come down and start using this new array in exchange for our variable that we're using down here. So I'm going to go ahead and just comment this out, and I'm going to come down here and try to get the right position in our array now. So we know this is actually equipping your main weapon, which goes into your main hand. So for now, we'll just put it in the main hand slot. So we'll just say equipment, and then we'll get the equipment slot. Maybe. It doesn't seem to be working. Let me just come down here for a second. I'm just going to cut and paste it in. And you'll want to make sure to convert this to an int as well. And let me just comment out the line below it. And now we're going to set this to be equal to value. So we replace this line, and actually let's take the lines that we were replacing and let's keep them above. So we're going to come down here, check to see if our transform has any childs, or for our weapon mount, and if it does, destroy it. And then down here is where we're making our next check. So I'm actually going to copy this whole line, paste it again, comment it out, and then change what we're checking. So we'll actually checking this now. And just paste that in. So it's going to look to see if our equipment in this particular equipment spot is equal to null. And then we'll have to come through, we're going to load it up, equipped weapon.name. So basically anywhere you see equipped weapon with the underscore, you're going to want to replace it with the equipment and then the index it's in. And if it's easier for some people to read, you don't have to leave quite as many white spaces. Usually for arrays, I don't. And then we'll just come through. So it instantiates the prefab in the position where our weapon mount is, and according to the rotation of our weapon mount. And that looks like that should be it. So I'm just going to save this off. I'm going to head back into the game. We do have an error here. And right here, where we're actually returning it. So we'll just take a look here. Yep, we were just returning that variable before, so now we're going to return this. And I think I actually am just going to get rid of the white spaces here for the array. As when I'm actually accessing arrays, for me, I just like not having the white spaces around the square brackets for some reason. Anyway, everything else looks good, so let's save that off. We'll come back in and see if the error disappears, which it does. And let's just test to make sure that the weapon does equip and unequip right now. And as you notice, I have gone ahead and set up 3 portals, and that's because for the next few tutorials we're going to do, I'm going to want different spots in the world to actually demonstrate these. So we're going to have different portals to go to like the starter town to do stuff, and out into the wild so we can actually start practicing our combat with our mobs, and another one to go wherever we want. But anyway, we just want to test these items, see if they work. So I'll open up my character and my inventory, and we'll just grab one. So it's equipping fine. We can still see it right here. And we'll unequip it. And it goes back into our backpack, and so it's unequipping fine. Great. Let's grab our pick. Now, one thing I have noticed that we really should change is that we're using double click to equip, but only a single click to unequip. And we should try to keep it consistent, and I'd like to keep it consistent with a double click. But I'm going to address that after we switch over to using the UI toolkit. Pretty much that was all I wanted to do for this video, was just go over the classes that we are going to be using for our armor, because it has been quite a while since I've looked at them, so I just wanted to get a little familiar with them. And I also wanted to get our PC class set up to be able to hold an array of items as opposed just to one. Because I really didn't want to create a bunch of item variables when all we needed was the array. And by now you should be pretty comfortable with working with arrays. So anyway, that's it for this video. So I'll just see you in the next one. Bye-bye.